Welcome to your magical messaging and mindset tip with Christine Collins. Hey there, it's Christine Collins, and I have a fun topic for us today if you struggle with organization at all, and in particular if you are neurodivergent. So this is something that I struggle with myself, and so I find it very useful, and I hope you do as well. So finding strategies that actually work for us can be very much boosted by understanding some of the neuroscience and psychology underlying whatever's happening. So for example, things like ADHD can involve lower dopamine levels. So that alters our ability to process rewards and overall affects reward processing in the prefrontal cortex. And so the practical application of understanding this is to break tasks down into very small pieces wherein we can experience a reward in return for completing each small thing. So kind of ticking things off of a list can be very rewarding, and people find different ways of doing this. There are tools that have something pop up on the screen whenever you complete a task, or you can have a little checklist that is manually written down on a piece of paper or in a planner. And going through that experience of checking off each small thing can release a little bit of dopamine, which reinforces the behavior. It also helps to be really clear and specific about the tasks. So instead of a really vague task like clean room or clean kitchen, it can be more rewarding to be specific about the thing that you're going to do. Wipe down the counter or move X and Y items out of this area. And even more helpful if you're able to kind of ascertain a length of time that might take, 2 minutes, 3 minutes for each task. We also tend to be incentivized by action trigger associations, meaning that if X happens, then I will do Y. So we are explicitly linking situations together, and many of us kind of have that ability to have that interconnectivity between things more naturally anyway. So this is a great way to activate that system and kind of linking tasks together. So the practical application of this would be, as soon as I finish breakfast, this next thing happens. So many of us have small systems in place like that, like perhaps you always wash your face and brush your teeth. That just happens naturally in that order. So you already have some of those little systems built for yourself that allow things to happen because they're linked to other things happening. We can do the same thing with tasks that we need to do. So let's say you have a little bit more complex task that you've listed out and you need to complete some component of writing a newsletter or creating some content. If you break it down, first of all, into those smaller components, but then link things that go together naturally. So every time I receive an email that I've made a sale, the next step is I record that data or information in whatever tool you use to track your finances. So you're linking thing A with thing B, making it much easier for that task to get completed. And having those really specific actions, again, is more helpful than having a vague notion of tracking my finances. It's really clear, I'm going to write down this piece of income. Or instead of keeping the kitchen clean, it's I wipe down the counter every time I bring in the groceries, or something to that effect. We can also help to offload cognitive burdens, which can be a big challenge, particularly if you're neurodivergent. But honestly, these days, I think everybody struggles with this because we are just inundated with so much data and information on a daily basis between emails and text messages and whatever else you're putting into your brain. There's a lot of data and information coming in, and much of it is useless. So using systems to offload some of that management of all of that content that's coming at you, using things like calendars, checklists, various different platforms and external systems. And I'm not here to tell you which one will work for you because we really are all different, but definitely trying out a few different strategies and seeing what seems to flow naturally for you can be very beneficial. That also helps to free up working memory, which can be another big challenge, not only for neurodivergence, but also for women that are in perimenopause or menopause, where memory starts to become a little bit more of an issue. Holding things in your mind, the older we get, gets more and more difficult. So using whatever tools and systems are available to you, writing things down, post-it notes, planners, whatever it is that actually works for you. Also, using context-dependent memory can also help with the same issue. So information is more easily recalled in the same context in which it was encoded initially. So if we have a situation where you need to have certain tools available to do a certain task, having those tools stored in that location in your home or your office or your business, however it is for you, having them accessible based on the task can be incredibly helpful. Something as simple as noticing that every single time you do a thing in the kitchen, you have to go across the kitchen to get it from somewhere else and bring it back over. Just simply storing it where it needs to live for the task can be monumental. So we're basically organizing things by practical usefulness instead of going off of someone else's categories or someone else's brilliant idea about what they think, how they think it needs to be organized and sorted. Do it based on what actually is useful to how you are using that thing. And that applies to our online strategies as well. So you could have some magnificent organizational system in terms of your folders and your files and your pictures and various different types of content that you may have stored, documents and whatever. However, if that system doesn't actually work for you, it's useless. So create your folders and your storage systems based around how you use those things. Instead of trying to label and categorize off of what seems like common sense, go off of where you use it. So if you're doing content and you've got a set of written content and then some pieces that are imagery, photos, videos, whatever that looks like for your business or your life, sort it in terms of where those things actually plug in and how they're being used. These are photos for blank. I use them for this purpose, and label them accordingly, because then it's a lot easier to go and find them and grab them when you actually need them. So for example, if you have a YouTube platform and a Facebook platform and an Instagram platform, and then you have emails and newsletters, you can label things by that, because YouTube, it's a certain size, it's different from other sizes, so label it that way, and then when you're making something for YouTube, it's very easy then to go in and find what you need. And again, customize it to you, now based on what I'm saying, the way that you are actually using it. Now, neurodivergent brains also have a little bit of a heightened response to novelty, things that are new, that feel exciting. Again, going back to the dopamine reward system. Many of us find we get bored easily when we keep doing things the same way all the time, which sometimes contributes to the disorganization because we may be consistently updating and changing how we do things, but there are other ways to satisfy that need for novelty. So instead, you can do things like using color coding, using your systems in a way that feels interesting and fresh and exciting, and maybe that's the piece that you change. So you may have a more consistent approach with the system itself, the organization itself, but the thing that changes is the look of it. Perhaps you change the visuals or something that allows you to stay engaged with it. Changing up the containers or using stickers. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can make it feel new, and maybe trying some new apps. Or if you have a platform, like I use Asana just as an example, that doesn't mean it's the right one for you, but you can change the images and the graphics if you're uploading images in there. That way you can keep your same system if it's working. Obviously, if it's not working, you can update it, but you can change something so that every day when you sit down and you open it, it looks and feels different. Or perhaps it's the wallpaper on your desktop or your phone to make it feel more novel to you without totally needing to reorganize everything. So neurodivergence can also impact our sense of time and internal time perception in the prefrontal cortex and cerebellum. And so it can be helpful to have kind of an external timing system, because sometimes we can lose track of time, or time can feel like it's moving very slowly or very quickly, and it may not necessarily correlate with the actual clock. So using things like timers and alarms or visual schedules, or for me, what I like to have is a planner. It's a paper planner. That's not what will work for everybody. So we're all different in terms of what type of system actually motivates you, inspires you, and keeps you feeling organized. So definitely play around with it a little bit and see what actually works for you. It can also be helpful to be more specific. with time. So rather than having kind of a vague chunk of time slotted for something, having something that's a little bit more concrete can be helpful. Now, again, we're all different here. So I know for me, what tends to work the best is if I have multiple things that I need to focus on, I'll kind of have them laid out as a plan that's a little bit more broad. So I'll have like 3 things, for example, that I'm focusing on or that I need to accomplish. And as long as those 3 things get done within the day or whatever time period, then it doesn't necessarily matter what order I do them in. And actually for me, allowing myself that kind of flexibility gives me more motivation. It allows me to kind of choose which thing I'm most in the mood to tackle first, knowing I'm going to get all things done. Now, this is a little different if you have priorities. You have something, one specific thing that absolutely has to get done today or has to get done in the next hour or so. And in that case, you would obviously prioritize that first. But if you have some flexibility, and I'd say the more flexibility you can give yourself, the easier it is to manage some of these things. You can allow yourself some room to kind of move through different projects in the way that fits your flow in the best manner possible. And of course, if getting into a flow state is something that you desire, it certainly makes work much easier. When we are in a flow state where time does seem to kind of melt away and we just breeze through things and get things done and we feel inspired and we feel motivated, getting into that flow state is a lot easier when we have tools to support us. My favorite tools for that tend to be things like hypnosis, yoga nidra, and many of the mindset tools that I offer in my monthly mindset membership. So of course, feel free to check that out if you are interested in getting some of those additional layers of support. They really do help boost your productivity and your momentum on various different projects and things that you're working through. So you can check all of that out on my website at transformcreate.com, or if you're a podcast listener, that information is always available to you in the show notes. And until we connect the next time, I wish you a most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.